Hi, I'm actor Ian Champion, and welcome to History of Horror Cinema, my personal podcast tour of the good, bad, and the ugly of horror movie history. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe. Before I Hang, 1940. Boris Karloff's follow-up to The Man with 9 Lives in 1940 was another in his gallery of mad scientists, completing a trio with director Nick Grind for Columbia Pictures here from a script by radio dramatist Robert Hardy Andrews. It's a cut above the usual fare, with a tense and claustrophobic atmosphere of noirish doom that thankfully had its original misleading title changed from the tacky The Wizard of Death. Karloff is Dr. John Garth, a scientist about to be sentenced to death but media labeled as the Mercy Killer for his abortive attempt to prolong the life of a patient. Compounding the backstory for sympathy, he delivers his last statement to the judge with a sincere gravitas, explaining his altruistic motives for trying to end the man's suffering with which old age had poisoned his body. Indeed, made up with white hair and moustache, his character is every inch a kindly, compassionate grandfather figure. The judge is forced to rule that Garth be hanged within the next month. Yet with 3 weeks to go, he is offered the chance to continue his work by the warden, Ben Taggart, who is fascinated by his idea of a serum extracted from life cells in a quest for possible immortality. A race for life against death, Garth observes lugubriously, but jumps at the chance to do as much as he can. His plaintive daughter, Martha, Evelyn Keyes, and his assistant, her fiancé, Dr. Ames, campaign for his freedom, a minimal role for the athletic Bruce Bennett, who distinguished himself more as a silver medalist shot putter in the 1928 Olympic Games. Garth instead employs an interested colleague to assist him in his research, Dr. Ralph Howard, a return to scholarly roles for Edward Van Sloan, famous as Van Helsing in the first 2 Dracula films, also partnered with Karloff in Frankenstein as well as The Mummy, amongst others. He is almost unrecognizable without his familiar glasses, and adds academic dignity to the medical fun and games alongside Karloff. The fatal variable in the ensuing lab work comes courtesy of Garth's decision to use the blood of an executed 3-time killer for his next batch of serum. The other twist is that after persuading Howard to inject him as a guinea pig, his sentence is commuted to life imprisonment. Suddenly, he is the unexpected beneficiary of extended life anyway, notwithstanding a bloodstream swimming with pioneering fluid. Dr. Howard is the first to notice the side effects apparent in his colleague, a gradual reversing of the aging process. Garth's hair is returning subtly to grey, and his eyesight has regained strength. The bad news is that he is also in possession of an unwelcome bonus tendency toward homicidal impulses. While this is the only aspect of the film that jumps the credibility gap in an otherwise sterling bid for tonal realism, it's also where the macabre fun is to be had. Over the course of the remaining plot, whenever his work is threatened, Garth unwittingly glazes over as the murderer within takes over. Karloff perspires at the brow, coils a silk handkerchief into an elegant strangler's weapon, and gravely throttles his victim with a gritty, grim understatement, beginning with the unfortunate Dr. Howard. His use of shiny black rubber gloves is a memorable touch of sadistic kink, putting one in mind of Peter Cushing's Frankenstein doctor years later in Frankenstein Created Woman. It is not only Before I Hang's unseen killer who casts a perceptible shadow over the film. Cinematographer Benjamin Klein, who had previously worked with Grind and Karloff shooting The Man They Could Not Hang and The Man with 9 Lives, aids the film noir mood greatly. His gloomy lighting creates a tangible, brooding dread, especially as Garth begins his uncontrollable descent into serial dispatching. There's a nice irony in the judge decreeing that without evidence implicating him in Howard's murder, Garth is soon pardoned with the declaration, "We hope and pray that your life will be long and fruitful." If he only knew the toxic brew coursing through the former prisoner, he may have reconsidered. Like a walking virus, Garth is commanded from within to spread his infection with no time to waste. He bluntly tries to convince his gracefully aging friends to volunteer for inoculation. Aside from a mature acceptance of their allotted 70, One look at his twitchy forcefulness tells him that this is not a fountain of youth they fancy drinking from. A one-on-one appeal, though, to esteemed pianist pal Victor Sondini, Pedro di Cordoba does the trick. But before Garth can inject him, his Mr. Hyde persona curtails Sondini's ivory tinkling forever. Ultimately, the once good doctor has to be stopped. Yet it won't be a wooden turn from Don Beddoes' Captain McGraw that does it. Garth himself must turn himself in. He attempts to do so in a conditional fireside confession to his friend George Wharton, Wright Kramer, scuppered, however, by the handkerchief handiwork of his alter ego. Enough of Garth's humanity is accessible for him to finally hand himself over to the safekeeping of his prison. The staging of this climax is handled effectively, as he marches with purpose through the fog to the gates, and an inevitable Hollywood price to be paid. Overall, Before I Hang is a solid and surprisingly meaty horror thriller across such a slight running time of 60 minutes. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe.